There are moments in human history when a whisper cuts through the noise of the ordinary world, a whisper that suggests our story did not begin where we've been taught to begin, a whisper that hints at architects, watchers, and scientists whose fingerprints stretch across the oldest stones on Earth, and every time that whisper surfaces, it triggers the same unsettling question. Who were the beings that shaped the early chapters of humanity? And why has their story been buried beneath myth and dust? Tonight we step into that forbidden space, because long before our flags, our languages, and even our religions, there were the Anunnaki, not merely gods etched into ancient tablets, but a civilization of extraordinary intellect, engineers of life, guardians of cosmic knowledge, bearers of a science so advanced that even today it blurs the line between technology and magic. Most people only know the surface-level tales, celestial beings descending from the heavens, humanity molded from clay, and empires rising under their guidance. But beneath those familiar legends lies something far more provocative, something ancient scribes could only describe with metaphors, symbols, and riddles, a science capable of manipulating matter, consciousness, and time itself. A science so potent that later generations hid it behind the veil of religion and myth, terrified of what could happen if the uninitiated tried to wield it. In this video, we're going to peel back those layers. We'll trace the origins of the Anunnaki across ancient Mesopotamia, decode the philosophical implications of their presence, and examine the forbidden principles they allegedly taught, principles that might explain humanity's sudden leap in knowledge, architecture, astronomy, and even inner awareness. By the end, you won't just see the Anunnaki as distant figures from a forgotten past, but as a key that unlocks the hidden architecture of your own consciousness. And before we journey deeper, I want to give you something powerful, something that aligns perfectly with the themes we're exploring. I've created an ebook titled 5 Ways to Talk to the Universe and Actually Get an Answer, No BS. If you've ever felt guided, pulled, or spoken to by something beyond the physical, this book will show you how to open that channel deliberately. You can find it through the link in the description and in the bio. Now, ready to enter the realm where ancient science meets cosmic mystery? To understand the forbidden science of the Anunnaki, we must first step back into the cradle of civilization, into a world where humanity's earliest cities rose as if from nowhere, complete with mathematics, astronomy, agriculture, and written language already astonishingly mature. Archaeologists call this place Mesopotamia. Ancient scribes called it the land where the gods walked among men. The first clay tablets describing the Anunnaki date back over 5,000 years to Sumer, a civilization that appeared suddenly, without the gradual developmental curve expected of ancient societies. Their texts do not read like myth in the way we understand myth today. They read like memory, like history encoded in symbolic language. They name specific beings, record lineages, describe tools, technologies, and functions. They speak of me, divine laws or codes that structured reality itself, laws that resemble, in a poetic sense, the frameworks of physics, biology, and consciousness. But who were these beings? The Sumerians never called them gods in the sense of omnipotent spirits. Instead, they portrayed them as elevated, knowledgeable beings, civilizers, teachers, and rulers. Anunnaki translates roughly to those of royal blood who came from the heavens. They descended from the sky, carried out specific tasks, and interacted directly with humanity. Their detailed descriptions, height, clothing, tools, even protocols, suggested not ethereal deities, but an advanced race that the Sumerians simply had no vocabulary to fully describe. Across later cultures, echoes of the Anunnaki appear under different names: the Netjeru of Egypt, the Watchers of the Book of Enoch, the Devas of ancient India, the Shining Ones of Irish myth. Different civilizations, separated by vast distances and eras, preserved curiously similar accounts, beings descending from the sky, imparting knowledge, shaping early society. This raises a philosophical question that scholars and mystics still grapple with. Why do so many of the world's oldest cultures share nearly identical narratives of heavenly teachers bringing forbidden knowledge to Earth? The answer often lies not in the stories themselves, but in who controlled the narratives afterward. As civilizations rose and fell, priesthoods and empires learned to weaponize knowledge. They hid what they didn't want the masses to understand. What was once open wisdom, science, cosmology, metaphysics, became sacred mystery, restricted to elite initiates. Whole libraries were burned, tablets shattered, temples buried under sand and silence. Whether the Anunnaki were literal beings or metaphors for a forgotten epoch of advanced human knowledge, one thing becomes clear. Their legacy was fragmented deliberately. Philosophically, the legend of the Anunnaki forces us to reconsider human origins, not as a linear ascent, but as a cycle of revelation and concealment. Their presence implies that humanity's earliest teachers were not primitive shamans fumbling in the dark, but sophisticated minds operating with an understanding of energy, biology, and universal law. And if their science was so powerful that later societies suppressed it, what exactly were they trying to hide? What principles of consciousness, creation, or cosmic structure did the Anunnaki embody? Principles that could fundamentally alter the way humans understand reality. That is what we will begin unraveling next. To understand the forbidden science of the Anunnaki, we must first step back into the cradle of civilization, into a world where humanity's earliest cities rose as if from nowhere, complete with mathematics, astronomy, agriculture, and written language already astonishingly mature. Archaeologists call this place Mesopotamia. Ancient scribes called it the land where the gods walked among men. The first clay tablets describing the Anunnaki date back over 5,000 years to Sumer, a civilization that appeared suddenly without the gradual developmental curve expected of ancient societies. Their texts do not read like myth in the way we understand myth today. They read like memory, like history, encoded in symbolic language. They name specific beings, record lineages, describe tools, technologies, and functions. They speak of me, divine laws, or codes that structured reality itself, laws that resemble, in a poetic sense, the frameworks of physics, biology, and consciousness. But who were these beings? The Sumerians never called them gods in the sense of omnipotent spirits. Instead, they portrayed them as elevated, knowledgeable beings, civilizers, teachers, and rulers. Anunnaki translates roughly to those of royal blood who came from the heavens. They descended from the sky, carried out specific tasks, and interacted directly with humanity. Their detailed descriptions, height, clothing, tools, even protocols, suggested not ethereal deities, but an advanced race that the Sumerians simply had no vocabulary to fully describe. Across later cultures, echoes of the Anunnaki appear under different names: the Net-Jeru of Egypt, the Watchers of the Book of Enoch, the Devas of ancient India, the Shining Ones of Irish myth. Different civilizations, separated by vast distances and eras, preserved curiously similar accounts, beings descending from the sky, imparting knowledge, shaping early society. This raises a philosophical question that scholars and mystics still grapple with. Why do so many of the world's oldest cultures share nearly identical narratives of heavenly teachers bringing forbidden knowledge to Earth? The answer often lies not in the stories themselves, but in who controlled the narratives afterward. As civilizations rose and fell, priesthoods and empires learned to weaponize knowledge. They hid what they didn't want the masses to understand. What was once open wisdom, Science, cosmology, metaphysics became sacred mystery restricted to elite initiates. Whole libraries were burned, tablets shattered, temples buried under sand and silence. Whether the Anunnaki were literal beings or metaphors for a forgotten epoch of advanced human knowledge, one thing becomes clear: their legacy was fragmented deliberately. Philosophically, the legend of the Anunnaki forces us to reconsider human origins, not as a linear ascent, but as a cycle of revelation and concealment. Their presence implies that humanity's earliest teachers were not primitive shamans fumbling in the dark, but sophisticated minds operating with an understanding of energy, biology, and universal law. And if their science was so powerful that later societies suppressed it, what exactly were they trying to hide? What principles of consciousness, creation, or cosmic structure did the Anunnaki embody? Principles that could fundamentally alter the way humans understand reality? That is what we will begin unraveling next. To unlock the forbidden science of the Anunnaki, we must begin with one of the most startling patterns hidden within ancient texts. The idea that the Anunnaki were not simply rulers or overseers, they were engineers, not in the modern mechanical sense, but in a far broader, more cosmic way. The oldest Sumerian tablets describe the Anunnaki performing acts that appear through the lens of ancient language as divine miracles. But when reinterpreted with modern eyes, something intriguing happens. These miracles start to resemble advanced scientific operations, genetic manipulation, energy transmutation, astronomical calibration, and the controlled shaping of human consciousness. The first forbidden principle attributed to them is something the Sumerians called Nam Lugal, the power to command reality according to code. The word is often translated as kingship, but deeper examination reveals a more esoteric meaning. Nam Lugal referred not to ruling people, but to ruling patterns, laws, and structures that bind the physical and metaphysical worlds. To possess Nam Lugal was to understand how reality is built and how to modify it. This is where the story takes a radical turn. Ancient myths describe the Anunnaki as beings who could speak things into existence, not metaphorically, but literally. Their language was not mere speech, it was vibration, intention, and mathematical precision woven together. A proto-science of manifestation deeply rooted in resonance. The idea that sound, frequency, and consciousness could alter physical matter appears again and again, not only in Sumer, but in Egypt, Vedic India, the Mayan world, and Tibetan teachings. It's as if these cultures were trying to describe the same phenomenon, that at the foundation of creation lies vibration, and those who master vibration master reality. The second forbidden principle is the mastery of biological architecture. The Sumerians recorded that humanity was shaped, refined, and awakened through a deliberate process guided by the Anunnaki. The clay they speak of is not physical mud, it is the base material of life, handled by beings who understood the genetic symphony that defines a species. These myths paint a picture of humanity not as an accident, but as a carefully tuned instrument. If so, then the sudden appearance of agriculture, mathematics, law systems, astronomy, and monumental architecture is not a coincidence. It is a reflection of a consciousness jump, a shift from instinctual existence to structured intelligence. The third principle is perhaps the most provocative. The Anunnaki taught humanity how to work with the hidden layers of the universe, the unseen networks that connect thought, energy, time, and matter. Later cultures preserved this knowledge in fragments: the Egyptian Ka, the Indian Prana, the Chinese Qi. These were not religions, but sciences of subtle energy, the blueprint of the universe encoded in human awareness. But knowledge of this magnitude always attracts control. As Sumer fell and new empires rose, those in power realized that understanding consciousness and vibration granted influence far beyond physical weapons. So the science became myth. What was once open teaching became ritual. What was once understood became compartmentalized, mystified, or lost entirely. And yet, pieces survived, whispers of a time when humans and heavenly ones shared knowledge. Clues in temple walls, star maps, mathematical ratios, and stories disguised as legends. The more one follows these breadcrumbs, the more a pattern takes shape. The Anunnaki were either actual physical beings with advanced knowledge, or a symbolic memory of a civilization far beyond what modern history recognizes. In both interpretations, their forbidden science points to the same implications, that human consciousness is capable of far more than we've been led to believe, that ancient civilizations understood principles we are only now beginning to rediscover, and that the forces who shaped early humanity may not have vanished at all. They may simply have stepped behind the veil of myth, waiting for the next epoch when humanity becomes ready to remember. To go deeper into the forbidden science of the Anunnaki, we must explore the paradox that sits at the heart of every ancient account. The more advanced these beings were, the more their actions resembled something between physical technology and spiritual mastery. This dual nature, half scientific, half mystical, is what caused later civilizations to either deify them or fear them. And this is where the story becomes even more fascinating. The Anunnaki were said to operate within 3 layers of reality simultaneously: the physical world, the energetic world, and the realm of encoded information, what esoteric traditions later called the Akashic Plane, the Tablets of Destiny, or the Divine Blueprint. In modern terms, we might call these layers matter, energy, and data. The Sumerians portrayed the Anunnaki as beings who could bridge these layers effortlessly. Their devices, carried, worn, or embedded within their temples, were not described as machines in the way we think of machines today. Instead, they were portrayed as living instruments, tools powered by consciousness, intention, and resonance. Tools that required the user to be psychically attuned, not mechanically trained. This brings us to a rarely discussed principle. The Anunnaki did not separate science from spirituality. To them, they were the same discipline. This alone challenges modern thinking. Today, we divide physics from metaphysics, astronomy from astrology, medicine from energy healing. But the ancients, guided or influenced by these beings, did not. Their sciences were holistic, unified, and deeply interconnected. They studied the stars not only for navigation, but for understanding the cycles of consciousness. They practiced healing not just with herbs or surgery, but with sound, geometry, and intention. One of the most profound symbols tied to them is the rod and ring, a motif carved into countless Sumerian reliefs. Mainstream scholars say it represents authority, but esoteric researchers see far more. The rod resembles a tuning instrument. The ring resembles a portal or harmonic loop. Together they symbolize the ability to manipulate vibrational reality, something the Anunnaki were revered for. Imagine a technology that doesn't rely on electricity or combustion, but on harmonic resonance, a device that works because the user's consciousness activates it, a mechanism that tunes reality the way a musician tunes an instrument. This interpretation also sheds light on the legendary Tablets of Destiny, which the Anunnaki guarded with extreme seriousness. The tablets were described as objects that could rewrite fate, alter outcomes, or command natural forces. Ancient scribes were attempting to describe what might have been a cosmic operating system, something that governed the rules of reality itself. To possess the Tablets of Destiny was to understand, or even manipulate, the code behind existence. But where does humanity fit into this? According to the oldest myths, humans were not merely laborers or observers, They were designed to eventually inherit this knowledge. The Anunnaki are depicted teaching early kings astronomy, geometry, agriculture, writing, and the cyclical patterns of consciousness. They were preparing humanity to awaken to its own latent abilities. This is where myths from around the world converge again: the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden, the fire stolen by Prometheus, the knowledge given by Quetzalcoatl. These are symbolic stories of humanity receiving tools that could elevate or destroy, depending on how they were used. And that leads us to one more layer, the most hidden layer. There are ancient hints that a schism occurred among the Anunnaki themselves. Some believed humanity deserved access to cosmic knowledge, while others believed humans were not yet ready. This conflict appears as divine wars, fallen angels, exiled gods, and cataclysms across multiple traditions. The result? Humanity received fragments of the forbidden science, but not the complete system. Some pieces were encoded in myths, some were hidden in temples. Some were preserved through mystery schools, esoteric orders, and spiritual lineages. And some, according to these traditions, remain locked within human DNA, waiting for activation when consciousness reaches a critical threshold. This missing knowledge is what continues to pull people toward the Anunnaki narrative. It's not just curiosity, it's recognition, an intuitive sense that we're remembering something we once knew, and that something profound lies just beyond the edge of our understanding. Now that we've explored the hidden framework behind the Anunnaki's forbidden science, the question becomes, what can you actually do with this knowledge? Because ancient wisdom is not meant to be admired from a distance. It is meant to be applied. And contrary to popular belief, the most profound practices are not complex rituals or exotic ceremonies. They are simple, precise, and rooted in principles the Anunnaki themselves were said to embody: vibration, intention, coherence, and conscious creation. Let's break this into practical, usable steps. 1. Mastering vibrational alignment through sound. The Anunnaki's first principle, creation through vibration, appears in nearly every ancient civilization. They understood that sound is not just noise, it is structure. It organizes matter, influences emotion, and shapes consciousness. A simple practice you can begin using: the harmonic tone ritual. Sit comfortably and inhale deeply. As you exhale, produce a long hum, steady, controlled, and felt in your chest. Focus on creating a pure, stable vibration. Continue for 3-5 minutes, letting the sound tune your internal state. What happens is subtle but powerful. Your breath, heartbeat, and mind begin to synchronize. This coherence is the gateway to higher perception, a state the ancients considered essential before attempting any form of manifestation or intention setting. 2. Using directed intention to shape outcomes. If the Anunnaki used language as a coding tool, then intention was the operating system behind it. To apply this, try the 3-line intention method. State the outcome you desire as clearly as possible. State the emotional frequency you wish to feel when it manifests. State the action you are willing to take toward it. Example: I am receiving new opportunities that support my growth. I feel aligned, excited, and calm. I take inspired action as it appears. This trifecta, clarity, emotion, and action, mirrors the ancient formula of creation: thought plus feeling plus motion. 3. Activating inner awareness through pattern recognition. The Anunnaki taught early kings to read the universe as a web of patterns, not superstition, observation. Every moment offers signs, synchronicities, and subtle cues. Here's a simple practice: daily pattern scan. At the end of each day, write down 3 unusual coincidences. 1. Repeating number, symbol, or phrase you noticed. Anything that felt out of place. Within a week, you'll see a narrative emerging, a dialogue between you and the universe. Ancient initiates believed this dialogue was the first step toward awakening latent capacities in the mind. 4. Working with the energetic field. The Anunnaki understood the human aura as a living interface, part biological, part energetic. You can enhance this interface with a practice called energy brushing. Stand with feet firmly planted. Move your hands slowly, 6 to 12 inches above your body, sweeping downward. Imagine clearing static or dust from your field. Finish by placing your hands over your heart for 10 seconds. This simple ritual resets your energetic boundaries, reducing anxiety, confusion, and emotional noise. 5. Embodying the awakened human blueprint. Every tradition influenced by the Anunnaki emphasized one thing: human potential expands when consciousness expands. So the final application is not a technique, it is a mindset. Live as if you are participating in a larger cosmic story, because you are. The more you act with awareness, clarity, and intention, the more your reality begins to shift in response. The ancients didn't see this as magic. They saw it as the natural function of a conscious being operating in alignment with universal law. As we reach the end of this journey, take a moment to notice how different everything feels now. The Anunnaki are no longer distant figures trapped in ancient clay. They're a mirror held up to humanity's forgotten potential. Their forbidden science, once shrouded in secrecy, reveals a simple yet transformative truth. We are not passive passengers in the universe. We are participants in its unfolding. Throughout this exploration, we uncovered how the Anunnaki operated at the intersection of matter, energy, and consciousness. We saw how their legacy echoes across civilizations, encoded in symbols, myths, and metaphysical sciences that survived the fall of empires. And we recognized that the greatest secret was never merely about gods or extraterrestrial beings. It was about the dormant capabilities within us. Because the real inheritance wasn't technology, it wasn't temples, it wasn't even knowledge. The true inheritance was awareness, the ability to shape reality through vibration, intention, and coherent consciousness. The same principles they embodied, the same principles ancient mystery schools guarded, and the same principles you can now apply in your own life. And maybe that is the reason so much of this knowledge was hidden, not out of malice, but out of caution. Power without understanding is chaos, but power with awareness, that changes everything. As you move forward, remember that you are not just observing history, you are reclaiming it. Every moment you choose awareness over autopilot, coherence over chaos, intention over distraction, you awaken a little more of the blueprint that ancient traditions believed humanity was destined to embody. And if you want to deepen that connection, if you want to open the channel between yourself and the universe with intention rather than accident, my ebook, 5 Ways to Talk to the Universe and Actually Get an Answer, No BS, is a perfect next step. It distills everything we've explored here into clear, practical techniques you can start using immediately. You'll find the link in the description and in the bio. I'll leave you with one question, one that has echoed through every age where humans dared to seek the hidden truth. What might your life look like if you remembered who you truly are and who you were always meant to become?